Welcome all. The recording link will be put into the presentation deck for you. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodian of the land on which we actually meet today and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. I extend that respect to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders peoples here today. General code of conduct, hopefully we'll all be very welcoming and opening to questions and viewpoints. Most user groups you will find we've actually could have got a bit of, conditions in terms of coming in just to make sure that we all respect and be kind and understanding of other people's differences and that we're patient and friendly, and we try to use the most appropriate images and texts and be considerate of others as we start to work there. Okay, so I am Kirsty McGrath. For anyone that might actually be new, throw your hand in the air if you're actually new and you haven't come before. So you've got your little hands up symbol that you can throw up the very top. You'll see a little smiley face with a hand. Welcome, Daniel. Hey, Zach, welcome. Always nice to see some new faces come in, and Arif as well. Hey, good to see you in here. Hopefully we'll see you back another time and you found some value out of the session. So I run the adoption user groups for Australia, Sydney and Melbourne. Of course, we're in a virtual environment. I'm not flying down to Melbourne at the moment due to isolation and lockdown. So hopefully we'll get a chance to kick those back off. We managed to have just snuck in one face-to-face in-person session this year, which was really wonderful to see some of you again. And hopefully we'll get back to that point, maybe end of year, it might be next year yet, when the Microsoft Reactor opens back up. So what have I been doing over the last, month or two? Yeah, I had my 50th, I know. That was an ISO 50th in lockdown. I had a lot of wonderful people sending stuff through the mail, and my door was being knocked on all day with deliveries and gifts, which was just so fabulous. I'm actually born on Black Friday the 13th. So we were having a Friday the 13th, big party. Yeah, no. So anyone that's out there that's had a birthday in the last month or two, you're in isolation, my heart goes out to you and happy birthday to everyone. These are the cakes that I actually made. I made my own 50th and I've been doing a caking course, advanced techniques. So everyone often will know that I'm doing my cakes. It kind of keeps my head focused and a little bit out of work when I need to. And that is my oldest daughter and my grandson. And I've got another two boys. They're identical twin boys. They're 22. And so that's kind of me and my family and birthdays and what I've been up to, a bit of my life. Okay, let's get into it. What's new? 2 months of what's new. Here we go. So let's work our way through. I've got some examples. I'll see what I can actually remember from. There's a lot of content. I'll try and explain things as we go along, and then we'll actually have our speaker, Robert Crane, going through Windows 365, the whole cloud for Windows. What does that actually mean? And look down. So we can now find the meeting recordings through our Microsoft search, so based on the transcript. So we can actually type things that might be in the transcript, and it will now start to come up in Microsoft search. So these are some of the things that have landed. We've got slide translate now in PowerPoint Live to be able to help those where English may not be their first language. For example, we're so very used to sort of thinking more of ourselves, they can now translate. Paging in the video gallery flowing through. So if you start to have a large gallery, so this is sort of that 3x3 gallery, then what will happen is you've now got the arrow back and forward. A lot of people were kind of wanting that. You saw it in Zoom and it's like, well, why can't we kind of scroll across and see others? So that's through. The one that I do particularly love, though, is this organization-wide background. So it's become temporarily available. You can add actually up to 50 images in your back end. You do require an advanced communications license to be able to do that, and that will then roll out in terms of the whole organization for your staff to be able to pick from particular backgrounds to be able to support, I suppose, a little bit of branding as you move along. By the way, Microsoft Teams will not support Internet Explorer 11 from the end of November. That was starting from end of November last year. So if and I'm seeing out there, and I've been working with a lot of organizations that have got a lot of Internet Explorer, so I thought it might be a bit of a reminder for everyone. So we've talked about the presentation mode. I'm currently using it on a side-by-side at the moment. It's now available, so you can see me in the side-by-side new mode. There's also the reporter mode. So there was the initial phase where there was just sort of the one. You'll now see that there are actually 3. So that was what was coming soon. Now you can start to see it flowing in. When we're looking at the recording, and it kind of separated out in terms of recording live transcripts and turning it on, and there was some confusion around does the org-wide prevent the use of personal ones? Look, at this point, I'm not sure in terms of some of the conditions. There is a little bit of learn more that's coming. So when it does, I'll, hopefully be able to update you a little more around that. It's not actually kind of fully out yet. It's sort of in temporary. It won't be till a little later in the year that's going to be available, by the way. Okay. The transcription now, that's going to allow both of them to kick off simultaneously, so you're not having to choose one and the other, for example. So that's always been a little bit of a challenge where people kind of go, well, I want the transcript too, so they had to turn both on, and they were often sort of missing that. So that's now coming in. You can in the back end start to sort of have a look at that and what you want to turn on or off as an organization, by the way, but you will find it in your meeting after the fact under recording and transcripts, and you can download them through there. Some of the really cool new backgrounds that are flowing through. Microsoft have had a few come through recently. You'll find them online. There's some great new nostalgic ones. There's Paint, and there's the Solitaire and Mr. Clippy, and now Office has also got some backgrounds. If you two tend to sort of spend a lot more time in Office, there's some rather cool, neat Office backgrounds. So I put those links in this month. There's real-time telemetry for your meetings that your users can actually have access to, so they can look at the call health. It is a little bit on the techie side, so your average user might look at it and really not be so interested, but it is available. The hard mute now actually includes those that are dialing into meetings. So it used to be kind of only those that were in Teams, and not that those were sort of dialing in from PSTN. So that's actually swapped over. On your mobile, you're actually going to find that there's going to be related content that's going to throw up in your meetings. That's actually coming from your mailbox and OneDrive and SharePoint to help you prepare for a meeting. So you'll see them kind of flowing through to prepare as you go. So it's going to be found on the meeting details page as you get in. And I've used this. It's actually been great. It helps you to be able to keep things in context. We can now easily transfer between the desktop to the mobile, whether you want to include or transfer. I've had it where I've been transferring if I turn it on from my mobile or your PC. It's been really rather smooth transition running between the two, trying to help things like, the audio where you get reverberation, for example, and it will cut off one and move over to the other. I used it a lot the other day when I was having some real issues with some of my Wi-Fi. So I was kind of swapping between the two as one was working better than the other on the day. It was great. We're now seeing Immersive Reader coming through on the mobile for your posts and chats so that it can read out loud for those that need it, so that we're actually inclusive. In the chat and collaboration side of things, the users can now set their default when it comes to sort of browsers and things like that. So what we're going to find now is you can kind of choose where you want it to go, and then down the bottom you can go, which one do I actually want, and start to pick that as well. Okay. So that's there. Inline message translation is now coming on your Android and iOS in the language of your choice. So a few things on the mobile there in your chat and collaboration. And there's an expanded emoji picker with more than 800 emojis now, which means that, you can choose and think about diversity a little bit more, which has been a really fabulous thing to flow through, and I know it will be very welcomed by a lot of organisations in this particular space. Okay, love it, love it. Thanks, Microsoft. Breakout rooms, there's a few things coming in there. This will be more sort of late September, sort of on the way of what's new and what's coming. You can now do pre-meeting room creation and assignment, which I'm particularly loving, so you don't have to sort of be in the meeting, you can preset. And there's also now breakout room presenter support. It is only on the desktop, so you can actually work through and put different people in charge of different rooms, and they get a whole heap of functionality that comes comes with that. You'll be able to see that flowing through. It's on the roadmap ID. You will see a lot of these in your message center. Some of them are, some of them aren't. Some you'll find online and all over the place. So I've put in links wherever I found specific blogs on the forums and articles and stuff like that for you along the way. Some of the things coming in Teams, the ability to swap content and gallery is coming back in. There were some real issues around kind of people and content and what you got to see. So that's actually coming back. Background effects for the web is being rolled out. Yay, I know a lot of people have been looking forward to that. So if you're coming through a browser, you can do the blur the background. And I mean, that always comes down to and dependent on your device, like all things. Okay. There's some pairing name convention, the big one. I've got it bolder. This is something that I'm really looking forward to, hoping, cross fingers, it's not actually pushed out. Often we see updates at the moment coming through of things that are kind of moving around in the message center. But that changing of the name of a channel and having the corresponding SharePoint folder actually flowing through, big winner. I know that's been a real source of contention for people getting confused when they go to their SharePoint site and the name of the folder is different to whatever the channel is inside Teams. So that's a great one. Coming in Teams, one to be aware of, and I've pulled this one out because Microsoft Teams is going to enable users to be able to purchase the app subscriptions through the Teams App Store. So this is where they can find the third-party apps to be able to buy themselves. So something to consider in terms of, potentially shadow apps or things that you may not want, but it is actually coming. Feature that's going to be rolling out from October, for example. So this is what's coming. So take that into consideration. I personally think it's a wonderful thing. We can start to plug in and get Teams enabled, so they've got that one place to go to get their work done, so being able to plug it in. And always, of course, dependent on in the back end what you've got turned on or off, so what they even see in their Team store as well. Okay. Another component that I do love is flowing through now into Teams is the word cloud poll. So you can open up an open-ended question and then that sort of cloud comes up and attendees can actually do thumbs up on particular words, for example. The responses are anonymous, the same as what you've actually got, in other areas. So love the whole, cloud word. It's pretty cool. Take a screenshot of it and, those sorts of things to be able to flow through. Outlook, to-do, flowing through to the online environment of Outlook in terms of what's new. So the great part about this means that because it becomes a pane, in terms of productivity, some of the cool stuff where you can do some drag and drop and put things from your email into your to-do, and also drag and drop and be able to put it like on your calendar, for example, from to-do. So some cool things coming in and seeing it side by side in your calendar as a flow through. There's a whole new re-imaging that's gone on, a whole design that's come through on the whiteboard. There's this just music that's sitting in the background, by the way. I'll just play the little video for you. But the main things are kind of that follow me sort of functionality of the individual, the auto shape dropping in as you start to draw and other content coming in. There's a new look and design to the actual based on the fluid framework of things like your tabs and that sort of things that are running around in terms of the commands and what that looks like. So lots of really great stuff, and you can start to see it flowing through there into Teams to be that little bit more active, and how it actually runs across all of your devices. Go and have a look. There's the link in here and it's got listed out. There's some really great new inking features as well, so one to have a little bit of a look at. Okay, moving on. Whole heap of stuff that's flowing through into Yammer. And look, it was only 2 months ago we saw a lot happening. We're seeing a lot of changes coming into the Yammer so that it actually kind of really fits into the Viva space and some of the back end. The way that it's integrating through. The Yammer emails are getting a bit of a refresh in how they actually land in Outlook. You've also got your post on behalf of. That sort of rolled out recently, not that long ago. So get to know that there are some sort of conditions around around that, and well, who should you? And you can have you can actually have a variety of people that can post on behalf of for one person. So not just one, it's not even assigned to just one. So there's multiple. You can follow a conversation now based on a topic, and there's some enhancements that are flowed through for the Communities app that actually sits inside Microsoft Teams. So a whole got a bit of a new look around the styling there. We can add now our communities into the Outlook for web. Not yet there for Windows in terms of our sort of desktop environment, but it is there in the web so that you can sort of do the community sort of running in there for you, and you can see that physically online. So might even turn on my little highlighter so I can put things as we get there. Q&A. So this, I didn't put this kind of in the team space because it's actually powered by Yammer. Effectively, it sits in Teams. However, so the Q&A is going to be flowing through into Microsoft Teams. We had it there as part of sort of a live event, but not so much a part of just a general Teams meeting. So awesome to be able to see that, where we can turn off comments and turn on Q&A instead, even in a meeting. Okay. Another feature, there's a new native modes experience so that it will actually look on a look very similar to what we've actually seen when we go to open up files elsewhere, for example. So you're going to see the the picture on the side of that sort of native mode flowing through. There's a links preview now when it comes to Yammer. So if there's a link there, it will actually give you a preview of the document or whatever it looks like, plus improved Yammer videos that are going to be playing back to be able to support lots of new file formats and an increased and improved bitrate video experience for playback across a mobile phone, which is really awesome to see. Thanks, Robert, for posting in some of the links for me. Appreciate it, so that they can have a look. Don't forget, at the very beginning of the chat, I did give you a link to this document. All these links are there, and you can actually click on any one of these to be able to follow up for you even as we go. A lot of links though, so you're going to have so many open by the end of the presentation if you're clicking along the way through. All right, let's have a look. Come back over. Let's go through. What else? So this is some of the stuff that's coming to Yammer, not sort of so much what's landed, but what's going to be here very soon. We'll have the nested replies finally sort of flowing through, being able to preserve the context of your conversation. So looking forward to that. Deep linking to specific content in terms of Yammer now. So it will give you sort of a better way that when you actually click on a link and it then sort of the triggering of that notification, it sort of takes you to the exact messaging, which is great to see because we've had a little bit of a sort of a skip around as to kind of where it's going. So those deep links are going to really help. Being able to delete parts of a Yammer conversation. So it's going to then show that this message has actually been deleted while preserving the context around the conversation. Bidirectional pagination. So when you land in the middle of that Yammer thread, for example, it can unroll the conversation sort of above and below it. So as you start to sort of move around. Those that are coming, so this is only on the web at the moment, is being able to sort feeds in Yammer and showing sort of what comes up first, for example. Okay, so that's not here yet, but in sort of other environments, but like Teams, for example, you'll see it on the web. Okay. Coming to forms, we've actually got the ability soon to be able to manage and group your forms and quizzes based on categories and putting them into collections, for example, which is great. And I know that that's one that's really been asked for a lot, especially across the education space. Education and Gov, look, sometimes, and if you are in that space, what you might see in your tenants, this is sort of in your environment, might be there on the enterprise, but may not be there yet for Gov and education. And sometimes it's vice versa. So on most of these links, it will actually tell you if it's come to you yet. I haven't gone into the Is it available for everyone? I've kind of focused a little bit more on enterprise, so apologies for anyone that might be in education or gov. But these are what we're starting to see, and it's going to start late September and be rolling out. You'll note I did put it in here because I know that it's been really rather important for teachers and those that sit in the education space. So it will be a little later. It will start after enterprise. What's new in SharePoint? Wow, there is so much there that really I just did more of a screenshot for you of the two and put the link in. There's a podcast that gets put out by Intrazone, some really great team that are there. They're helping around what's happening in SharePoint by, with Microsoft and Mark Cashman and the team. So, a couple of things that I wanted to point out to you as part of this particular group was things like boosting the news. So it only applies to your news posts that are put in the organizational news sites, by the way. It's not going to apply to your team sites, but you can actually boost news. I particularly loved the fact that custom list templates have come into creating a list. So if you do have existing list templates, you can actually have them sitting there in the back end as an organization where you can choose from other existing lists. So not just creating or from Excel, you can have templates there to create from existing. And this is all based on SharePoint. So it's sort of those SharePoint templates basically coming in from the lists. Okay. You've now got also being able to edit the page or the news inside Microsoft Teams now after you've added it as a tab in the Teams channel. So you don't need to go to the SharePoint site online to do editing. It's now live and you can do it inside Teams, which is great for that, place where you go to do your work inside Teams in a channel. So love that. Suggested attachments in Microsoft Planner. So now when you're in Planner and you go, I want to put an attachment, it will actually throw up suggestions based on the type. And it's, of course, what you've got access to, like all things. Vera, yes, the functionality available to save a form and come back at a later date. Look, at this point, it's not actually there for standard forms. If you have the more advanced sort of Pro, which comes from sort of Dynamics, then there's other functionality there. And as I'm working with the forms team, because we do sort of have meetings and what's coming and as a thing, I'm not there at this point, but I do know that it has been a challenge for a lot of people of the save and come back, but not in your standard. Okay. Some of the other sort of what's new in SharePoint and Stream here. Look, we've already talked about a lot of this when we were in the team side of it, for example, the recordings, for example, the Yammer topics that we've talked about, the recordings process, in the OneDrive, that stuff that's sort of coming up in a minute. So they're all things to keep an eye out, because often what's going on as a support network is what's flowing through into the likes of Teams or Stream and vice versa. So it might come up elsewhere. We've talked about sort of finding and viewing in Teams recordings. It's a functionality that's supported by SharePoint and Stream, and the generating of new captions, which I particularly like. So you can generate captions then in other languages off the back of Stream. So this helps those that need to get those sort of transcripts and have them flow through in other languages. Okay. And more languages are flowing through too, by the way, in terms of transcripts, something to keep an eye out on. What's new in OneDrive, there is an updated file picking experience that's coming through in terms of the Yammer, which was that sort of new interface we talked about. Immersive Reader now in terms of OneDrive and SharePoint to be able to help and support those that would like to have information read out to them, for example, for the neurodiverse and so that it's more inclusive. The link settings in terms of the quick permissions. You can see the little byte that's actually running on the right-hand side here. There is some changes that are slowly going to be flowing through in terms of OneDrive and SharePoint and how we actually sort of do our permissions and links, things to keep an eye out. So there's going to be some changes coming. This is one now to be able to quickly and easily get into those permissions directly now from your sharing and link permissions. Expiring access now for external users. I've put down the bottom down here. You can kind of see it. A little message will come up saying there is one user expiring in 21 days, and then you can go in and manage it and actually extend it as you need to. So we're now start to get notifications around it, which is great to see, so that they don't come back and go, I don't have access to that anymore. We can exclude specific files from the sync on a Mac now, and then PDF viewing updates have come through for your iOS and Android, so that it makes it that little bit easier to be able to see some of the views. Look, Viva is kind of a little bit of a whole new topic, a little bit like SharePoint. You can always join in the SharePoint user group, for example. They can actually help you around sort of some of the what's new and delve into that a little bit more as you go. We can then play with it. Okay, so in terms of Viva and keeping an eye out on it, just so that you know, your My Analytics that used to flow into your mailbox, you might have even seen it over the last week. It's now changed those emails that are flowing through. And instead of it being My Analytics, it's now actually your Viva, Microsoft Viva updates. So if you've got any newsletters or anything internally, help your users to understand what's actually going on. Jeff, you got your first one today. Yeah. So we've seen them flowing through this week. So you might find that your end users are a little confused around what's going on, because if they're not familiar with Microsoft Viva, they might think they're kind of getting spam. So a good idea to maybe do a little bit of an update inside your business organizations, govs, wherever you happen to be coming in from today. Just to try and help them to understand, and even a bit of an understanding of what sort of that My Analytics sort of background or workplace analytics, if you have it, what it's actually doing, so that they get a bit of an idea, because I do know that a lot just delete or turn off or not understanding of what's actually going on to help them on their working practice kind of thing. There's now the Workplace Collaboration Optimizer. Look, go in and have a look at that. That actually allows you to be able to, so say you've got floor planning and it's all plugged into sort of the Microsoft systems around your floors. It actually helps you when it comes to things like communication and where people can be sitting, and it's a whole Azure sort of back end component plugging into Viva. One to sort of delve into a little, it sort of supports a lot of the workspace of when we're back and working on a floor together at the moment. A lot of us aren't actually kind of working inside buildings, but one for future, okay? Exchange Online is no longer a prerequisite for your workplace analytics service plan. A really good one if you have workplace analytics inside your business. If you don't, you can before too long, and you can go to those that are providers to be able to purchase workplace analytics as well as your Microsoft account manager, should you wish to actually purchase it on top of the workplace analytics. And we have actually on top of the My Analytics, which is the Viva, Insights now. It's called Viva Insights. So it's all flowing through, name changes. So if you're a little confused, we have run a user group. We did have the team for Viva come in and talk through a lot of this. So if you want to go back and have a look, it is actually all there. Okay. There are a whole heap of new learning partners that are flowing in terms of Viva, so that you can do your Viva learning and sort of plug those in. So if you had subscriptions to these particular learning partners, you'll be able to plug it in to Viva Learning inside Microsoft Teams to support education inside. Okay. There's also some real feature updates when it comes to Viva Insights and some of the modeling that's actually flowing through. There's one in particular around managers and the difference around the way that they actually sort of work, but from sort of them as a manager to an individual. Something to dive into as you start to get Viva up and running inside your business. You may or may not have got to that point yet. So there's a pretty big learning curve, I think you'll find, for a lot of people around Viva if you're sort of plugging it in and getting ready. What's new in Office? Look, here we go. Now, we've seen some changes over time around the branding of what is classed as online. Microsoft had decided to retire the kind of the online branding for the web version of Office, because it was sort of doing the whole go to PowerPoint Online. So if you were in, it sort of said PowerPoint Online on the at the top, for example. So this was sort of up here. You kind of had sort of different people. So what we saw from one to the other might actually be different depending on the product. Now, that whole, what it's going to look like, they were going to refer it now to just sort of Word or Excel, for example. But you might see, depending on where you are, for example, if you're in Teams, it might say you're going to, or you'll see in blogs and things, Office on the web, or going to office.com version kind of thing, or go to PowerPoint in a browser. There's not a real kind of common term flowing through, just to make things a little confusing. Keep an eye out, and if you need to update any documentation, it will flow through. Most have got use. It's changed quite a bit over time, so we're sort of used to that, a little bit of fluid. I stumbled across some of the what's new across Microsoft 365, these Office updates, where it's links to all things to be able to drive in both sort of now and past and road mapping. It was a good little website that I happened to stumble across, and I mean, I'm delving into these things and clicking around all the time, but this was a good one to actually find. Another one inside Microsoft Docs, by the way, is in the very bottom left-hand corner. It's got download as a PDF, by the way, and it will literally download the whole thing as one big document. So you've kind of got a working manual if you need to in Microsoft Docs. So that was another one that I came across recently. I was looking at some of the documentation around meeting rooms, actually, MTR, and I could download the whole MTR pack. Coming to OneNote, I pushed this out of my Twitter. Big news in this space. Great refresh all coming through. So the two are merging to the one. Now it's going to start, and invitations will start to flow through in the second half of 2022. So this is next year, so towards the end of next year. So where we've got the Microsoft kind of Windows app, which is kind of a slimmed version with not the same functionality of the application. The application was sort of Office 2016 kind of version that had been running for a really long time. There's going to be a merge of the two. What you're going to find is the existing app, if it isn't connected, and it's not kind of that one that flows down from online, if it's a standalone, I would say, that needs to be recommended to move to the kind of the online connected version, because what will happen is the existing features that we particularly like, the unique features from Windows 10 version, the desktop app, not application, the app is going to start flowing into it. And as it then starts to update to you can kind of say like a 2019, 2020 kind of version, it will then roll out to the whole new app moving forward. There's a whole Q&A that you'll actually see in the what's coming. If you go in there, and I worked and all us OneNote MVPs worked quite extensively with the team to try and help everyone to lessen the confusion around the merging and what that actually looks like. So go and have a look. Go and have a look at the Q&A that's in there. Have any questions, please feel free to reach out. There's a lot, of course, that we can't talk about as OneNote MVPs, but we will help you wherever we can around some of because we've kind of grilled them at length on what this actually looks like next year. I'm really looking forward to it. There's some really cool stuff that's actually coming, and they've got some great design stuff. So it is absolutely, Jeff, it's a great move that's coming through. So I'm loving it and really looking forward to it. There's so much user confusion around which one to use, and they're using both, and the differences between phones and apps and applications, and which one are you rolling out as a business, are you putting out, and look, would be good to have that cleared up. Look, what's new in Excel for the web? There is a ton of stuff that's actually flowing in, and there's even more coming soon. this is one space that I think has got some really cool features coming into it. There is in the office sort of environment, there's a whole heap of keyboard shortcuts that are flowing in. The keyboard shortcuts, I am really loving these keyboard shortcuts. Some really simple things that we saw on our desktop that's actually flowing through, which is great. Okay. So the what's new, Jeff, I'll come back to your question in terms of what's in the conversation. I'm not sure what you're asking. If you want to extend on that, I'm happy to come back to what you're asking, or we can unmute at the end. So happy to have a conversation. The what's new in Excel for the web, text to columns is my favorite one. It's one that I have just wished was there. Simple data to be able to extend it out by the delimiters in the web version. So absolutely love that. If there's anything that's underlined in this presentation deck, it is your link to the blog, by the way. Okay, so it's all links. There's lots of pivot table improvements, sorting improvements, really good. So now the interactive charts that are not just for the desktop, but online as well. Custom color pickers, but what I really love, and I've put in bold here, is showing changes to the cell, because we're now in this real collaborative environment that you can go and see what's actually changed. So that's one I do particularly like. It's kind of that version history for a cell even. In the coming soon, some other more, some different components. I do love that we can now see, what that print looks like before we print it from online. So that print pagination piece, really important. But I like even more the fact that we can have a control over our print area so that we can put in page breaks and we're not wasting potential paper. I'm very much of the opinion that, try not to actually print. Try and be paper light wherever we can, but I do understand that there are reasons why. So the fact that we can reduce down the amount of paper that's printed by at least being able to work with it online is a winner for me for the environment. Now, coming up, look, there's a few things going on around the traps. Most of it is overseas at the moment in terms of conferences, for example. So, for example, the North American Collab Summit, if you're willing to get up in the middle of the night, often these things start at sort of 2 a.m, you're available to be able to join it, then, I highly recommend the Commsverse, for example, a really, really good one. The timing around it, they're never brilliant, but it is still in hybrid, so it's online as well as in person. A lot of them we are seeing in the US are going back to in person only and not online, which is, some of them are a little disappointing, but those that we do have online, fabulous. And you'll also be able to get to the recordings of those too. I've left in there the lists workshopping sort of on demand is still there. The Envision recordings are still there. And what's just been announced is the dates for Microsoft Ignite, and it's actually coming up in November, and it will be a digital event with Microsoft. So those are things that I would highly recommend registering, and I've still got the links in here for you from Ignite. As I said, lots to catch up on, and there was so much more than this too, guys. I try to focus more on the end user things that I think will make a difference for you. There are some stuff that we're kind of seeing. If you are rolling out meeting rooms, for example, meeting Teams room, there is a real gap at the moment on adoption content and training and other information actually out there. However, I'm more than happy to help you if you are rolling out meeting rooms. I found a whole heap of links to things like a demo of meeting rooms to be able to plug in, a couple of guides, some more help and learning if you're rolling out meeting rooms. So if you do need any support around that, you can always email me at kirsty@onpointsolutions.com.au. I'm trying to pull together stuff for anyone that's struggling in that space. All right. Now, kicking in, my guest speaker. Look, Robert, he's spoken once or twice for me now. It's always great to have him come in. I didn't actually put the link in, but I recently did a podcast with him around training, actually. So what I'll do is I might plug that link in to the presentation here for you so that you can go and have a look. So I will now, in a moment, pass on to Rob, who is going to be talking about sort of Windows Cloud. Why does it actually even matter really to us? And hopefully you've come armed with a few questions that you can ask around this latest technology. So, Rob is a Microsoft MVP. He's been around for a while. He has the PsyOps community, and there's some fabulous information on there, and you can subscribe to his sort of emails and information that actually flows through and updates. It does sit more in the technical space, but he does have lots of people like myself that he'll go in and interview. So I will hand over to him now and let him take over the screen. So I will stop presenting. And are you there, Rob, to kick off?
Yep, I'm there. So just confirm that you can see the screen.
We can indeed, the whiteboard.
Okay, so the idea is that I was going to kill you all with PowerPoint, but I'll leave that for someone else to achieve. So what I want to talk to you today about, or give you some overview understanding about, is a product that Microsoft recently released called, Windows 365. So the idea here is that, as you can see, Microsoft is branding much of its services in the cloud these days under the 365 moniker. So the first thing to remember is that if you want if you want Windows 365, then you are going to need to go out and add it to a Microsoft 365 environment. So if you do want Windows 365, what are you going to need to do is basically add that to an existing environment. Now, in the good old days, when we first started off in this game, we started off with a standalone PC, and we had all our data only on that device. And then what happened was, over time, is that people decided that they wanted to share that information with others in the environment, so that they then created a local area network between the two devices to share the information. The challenge with that is now you've got data in two places, you've got different sets of permissions, and that made things difficult to manage and control. So then what we added into that environment was a server. So the idea with the server is that you remove the data from the local devices and you put it in a single location where everybody can access it, and all the connectivity to that is maintained and secured appropriately. So of course, what's happened since then is we've now decided to go out and connect our environments to the internet to share data more and more and more. So what's now happened is that the devices, or the data, has moved, or is moving largely, from our server. It is now moving to what we euphemistically like to call the cloud, which effectively is a server somewhere, typically maintained by Microsoft, onto which our data now lives. Now, if we look back to the network environment, what we had back in the day was that we found that having two machines here generally caused us not to, it was a bit of a waste of money over time as we added more and more and more machines. So what we added to our network was a much larger server, and this was called typically a terminal server, all right, or what they call a remote desktop server box. And inside that, effectively, we ran a number of what they would call virtual PCs. So the idea with that was that we could set up an environment where people could access a terminal server session, and it would appear like a normal PC, and they could get to that from any sort of device. They didn't need as powerful workstations. Now, the challenge with a terminal server was that it was a fairly technical enterprise to set up. It required more power, more investment. It required challenges around sharing printers and all those sort of things. So as with everything, what we're now seeing is this terminal server is also being moved into the internet. So where that has actually ended up is that if you have heard of, hopefully, of a service from Microsoft called Azure. So Azure is basically just a data center managed and maintained by Microsoft. And the idea here is our terminal server, basically, which I'll call TS, has moved into Azure, which is, again, part of the cloud here. So what that means is that Microsoft is now able to manage all the hard stuff, all the infrastructure around the data center and around the server and keep it going. And then all that needs to happen is that we can, log in from anywhere to, get the data that we're after. Now, one of the big advantages with Azure when it comes to looking at the costing is Azure is billed basically per second. Okay, so the idea here is that if you use it for 1 second, you pay for 1 second. If you use it for a full month, you pay for a full month. So this is what they call consumption billing. Now, this is really good in many cases because it allows you to get down and only pay for what you use. But the challenge with this sort of billing is that it's very hard to estimate on a monthly, on a monthly budget, how much am I going to have to allocate for me? Okay, so at the end of the day, okay, so let me just hold on a sec. Are we having an issue with the whiteboard there? We've got some conversations there.
Yeah, at the moment I think it might only be one, Kim, that might be having some problems.
That's fine.
So
All right,
I just
wanted to check.
sending you out. I'm just asking if anyone else is, but
that's cool. All right, let me know if it's a problem.
Yeah, Kim, the recording is there as well to be able to come back to, so it will come up in that. Thanks, Rob.
That's all right. Okay, so the idea is that Azure is billed on consumption, which you may pay per second. So the problem with that becomes, if you think about Microsoft 365 billing, that's a per user per month, right? And it's a flat rate. So what that means is if you use your complete mailbox capability, you pay the same amount as if you use no mailbox capability. So it's a good way to budget. It's a good way to understand what you're going to be paying for. So the challenge with doing the terminal server or doing the shared sessions or the remote PCs in Azure was the fact that it was largely what they call consumption based. So Azure has had the capability to do virtual servers and do virtual desktops and all that. And they basically, what they called that back in the day was something called Windows Virtual Desktop. And that's a very technical way of configuring basically a terminal server environment. Now, what Microsoft did recently to simplify this whole process is that they released a service again underneath the covers. It's hosted in Azure. It uses all the capabilities we've talked about, and they called that Windows 365. And effectively, again, all it is a session or a PC session in the cloud hosted by Microsoft where they take care of all the infrastructure. Now, the benefit with doing this in the Microsoft cloud is, again, in today's environment, all the data that we want to access is also typically going to be in the cloud. So this is going to come from, our OneDrive for Business. This is going to come from Teams. This is going to come from SharePoint Online as well. Now, effectively, all of that data is going to live in the same location that our Windows 365 or our hosted PCs are. So what that means now is firstly, one of the big benefits is this is going to give us almost unlimited speed. Because the data and the machine that you're running is in the same data center, the access between that is really, really quick. The only thing that is sent up or down to you or that you see on your device will be what's on the screen. So that means that you're minimizing the traffic that flows over your internet connection to simply be the screen input output. All the data, all the PC, all the functionality is happening inside Microsoft data centers at an extreme speed. So if you're working with very large files, think CAD files, large PDF contracts, think graphics as well, you're going to be able to push those or move those to the cloud and access them as quickly as you could basically on-prem. So the first major benefit of this is going to be is that we're now able to abstract the device that you use to run your applications, as well as the data, and have Microsoft manage the majority of the needs for that. So they can manage, the setup of the PC, the backup, the fact that it's available. But the big differentiator between what came before and what comes now is basically a fixed cost. Okay, so Windows 365 provides a fixed cost per month. So what this means is that when you use your Windows 365 PC, you typically choose a power level or a size, as they call it, and then that will be a fixed cost per month, and there's no need to worry about turning the machine off to save money. So back in the good old Azure days, when it was in Azure, then you would have to turn the machine off, because otherwise you're still being billed for it, because it's being billed per second that is in use. So Microsoft's removed that and now given us the capability to run a machine 24/7, leave it on, and only pay a flat fee per month. Okay, so that is probably the number one benefit or the number one differentiator that has been brought to the fore with Windows 365. It is a fixed cost per month, which has been very different from the way that it has been before. Now, the second thing to think about is the device access. So one of the big challenges in today's environment is the fact that we live in a world where there are chip shortages, where there are failures to be able to ship the latest PC, get it into people's hands. I read a story today that basically is saying that they can't ship things like the Xbox, the latest Xbox, until 2023 because of the shortages that are out there. So if you've got people who have gone and they're working from home, and maybe they started out with their home PC and they found that it's not powerful enough and it can't do what they want, now they're going to want a new device to go and take advantage of the productivity that they get from the cloud and working from remote. This is going to be a challenge because a physical device is going to be very, very hard to come by in bulk, especially these days. Now, with Windows 365, we can now allow people to access the latest PC, the latest device provided, managed, and maintained by Microsoft, but we can allow them to access those or that device basically on their iPad, on their iPhone, on their Android, and basically using any web browser. So the idea is that when you think about it, you really don't need a powerful device to do a lot of your work. All you need effectively is a browser. So if you have a look here, I'll just show you what the portal looks like. So the idea is when you have a Microsoft 365 environment license, Excel, Word, PowerPoint, all those good things we're already familiar with, you can add on a subscription for a Windows 365 PC. So in this case, you'll see the machine that I've selected is 2 virtual CPUs, 8 gig of RAM, and 128 gigs of local storage. So the first thing is, like I said, it's a flat fee per month. I pay no more for this machine than what I've nominated here. So it's a flat fee per month. And the other thing to remember is it's a per user cost. So it's like licensing your mailbox. It's like accessing your SharePoint. It's a per user license. So the actual Windows 365 licenses are generally assigned to an individual user. They will appear in a portal like this, and that portal is windows365.microsoft.com. Now, in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click on this option here to open it in a browser. It's going to open a new tab for me. It's going to pop up and basically go through, excuse me, while I log in. It's going to basically allow me to log into a full PC using a window or using a browser to do that. So you'll see here that I can go into this PC in the window here. You'll see that I can run, my Excel, PowerPoint. I can look at my emails, do whatever I need to do. I have also got my OneNote running here. Okay, so you'll see that I use here a daybook. I've got a range of notebooks that I look at. And if I was, for example, to run Word, it would run Word. So for all intents purposes, this is a PC inside a Microsoft data center that I am accessing remotely via a web page. All right, so it has the full functionality of a PC to the specs that I selected when I got the license. So if we go in here and do a speedtest.net, so anybody who knows the speed of these sort of environments that you would get, I think you'll be pretty pleased to see what the results come out with. So give that a sec to complete. And the idea, as I said, the big benefit here is that the machine that we're on here and the data, so the data in Office 365 is effectively on the same network inside the data center. So you see here, I'm getting about, half a gig for a speed test back and out to the internet. And again, you'll see the download speed, the upload speed is even greater. It's almost 2 gig there. So that's one of the big benefits. But the main takeaway is that effectively this is, like I said, access to a full PC in the cloud for a fixed fee per month that you can access on any device. I've shown you here how to get access to it on the web. Up the top here, you'll notice that I have a number of settings that I can configure. So I can make an adjustment here. I can also move this to a full screen environment. So it looks and feels basically like a full PC here. You'll see that I can pin it to the desktop. And again, this effectively is my PC. So if I go in here and just show you, where's my, maybe I haven't set it up. So I'll be able to get to my OneDrive and so on and work on my files as before. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to, let me go in and
I've got a question for you, Robert. So
sure.
Jeff's just asked, so when you open Word or Outlook, it's actually the desktop version. It's like it's physically correct. Like your desktop through a browser, correct?
Correct. Exactly right. It's a full desktop as though you were sitting in front of it using your actual PC. It's exactly the same. It's not the mobile version. It's the full version. Now, getting the software from Word and Excel obviously depends on the license you have with Microsoft 365. So just think of what you're seeing here as another physical device. So it's like I've got another PC sitting in another room that I'm remote accessing. So what I'm going to do is I will close out of that Windows client there. Across the top here, you'll see you can download the appropriate apps for the desktop capability with Windows. You can do it with Mac, Android, and so on. Now I have done that here already on my Windows 10. So rather than going through the browser, I basically have an app here called the Remote Desktop app, which would allow me to connect to anything I have, those traditional terminal servers, but also the new cloud PC Windows 365 environment. Now, if I double click on this, again, it will take me through a login sequence. Now, what we would expect to see is I will now be logging directly into that PC that I just left. Okay, and to show you that when it does log in using this process, we would expect for it to return to the point where I see the document and the hello world when I left it. All right, so we're logging in. We've now got a full screen experience. This is using a dedicated client, client to access this remotely rather than just the browser we were just using. And you'll notice a little bit slow initially to do some caching and provide a better experience. And you'll see here that here is that document again that I was just typing in. So I've left it in that exact state. So the idea here is I can come in and out of this environment on any device that I have access to, and I will be able to pick up from that point going forward. So just to prove it one last time, let me firstly log into the PC here on my iPad. I will transfer across once I put in my super secret password.
We've got a couple of questions that have come through, Rob.
You want to read them out while I'm...
Sure. So we've got, will this support Windows 11 when it's released?
Yes.
Yes. Enterprise branding for the virtual PC.
I'll come to the virtual. I'll speak about the difference between the business plan and the enterprise plan shortly.
Okay, sure. And then there's another one around security and permission to install the desktop app.
So again, the answer to all of that's going to be, it's up to you how you want to configure it at the end of the day. All right, so it's as secure as you want to make it secure. So the answer is yes, you can install anything you want, and how you want to secure it comes down to the policies, because what happens is this is a PC on your virtual network, right? Just like a remote PC, it will pick up policies from what's called Endpoint Manager, Intune, Azure AD. So all the policies that have come down from the cloud, we push to the PC as it would a normal device.
So, Robert, a question from me. If I've got an end user or I'm doing an email out and I'm rolling this out for them to start accessing their work, what would be the best layman's terms, I suppose, to tell them what they've got coming?
So let me just hold that. Let me just go. Yeah. So that you saw me just log out.
Just something to, yeah, I did see that. I just thought something to think about.
I'll come back to you in a minute. Yeah. Let me just show you this before all the things time out. So what I need to do is hopefully pick up the sessions. Let me swap to my local session here and share that screen once I find the meeting that I'm in, hopefully. Let's have a look. There we go. What's this one? Here we go. That looks familiar. Where's the option here to join the meeting? Come on, where are you? That's a bit annoying. Okay, let me try my calendar. Here we go. Where's the link? No, that's not the link. Okay.
I did send it to you in an Outlook email, so you should be able to.
Yeah, no, I was hoping that it would appear in my Teams. I thought it would have appeared in my Teams, and it would prompt me. That's being a bit annoying, isn't it? But anyway, let me go over to my emails. Sorry about this. I probably deleted it. Oh, no, hang on. What have we got here? Anyway, if I get time, I'll come back to it. But the idea would be you'll get effectively the same experience if you use your iPhone and iPad once you put those devices on there. So the big takeaway to mention again is going to be the capability. Like I said, you can access it, your PC on the iPad, on the iPhone, on the Android, on the web, as well as your desktop environment. So it's going to give you that flexibility to basically all you need now is a browser with the backend managed and maintained by Microsoft. Sorry, Kirsty, you want to repeat that question?
Sure. So it was, if I had an end user, I'm doing up comms. We have a lot of change managers and trainers, and if I wanted to make it really simple and go Windows 6 365 coming now, would it be you can access your Windows PC on any device, like your iPad, iPhone, Android, have access to all your favorite desktop applications. And I gather, would it be, because there's a lot of organizations that would have things like in-house kind of applications, and can they actually access that, for example? Because that's the very next question. People will go, well, I need to access AutoCAD or whatever, and will I be able to, and those sorts of things. So how do we articulate it?
The marketing response is, yes, absolutely. The technical response is going to be, it depends, because again, think about the same thing with a standalone PC. If you have a standalone PC, to get it to access the corporate app, you're going to need to join it to the corporate network. You're going to have to secure it. You're going to have to do an amount of infrastructure. So the answer is yes, you can definitely do that, but it still doesn't change the fact that you would still need to have, you know, that sort of standard configuration set up. You don't have to do it on premises, you do it in the cloud. So the reality is, in my case, with all of this set up, the answer is yes. So again, thanks for the link that Jacob, I think, posted in there. So let me just now go and share my screen here on my iPad, and let's see if that displays for everybody. Okay, so hopefully you can all see the screen. That looks good. Look at that. Oh no, technical whiz. Just takes me a bit longer than most people, that's all. So you'll see down here, there's an RD client. I will run the RD client. And you'll see here that basically this is the same option. I would click on that. It will connect to my cloud PC, and it would again ask for the password, which I was hoping to not have to reveal to you. But again, the idea would be if I put that password in, then it would connect to it and you would see the desktop basically as I saw before. Although it looks as though I don't think, let's have a look here.
Not coming up on the screen, Rob.
Which is really good because it takes me forever to type in the password. There we go. And I'm all thumbs. So there you go. So now I'm logging into exactly that same desktop. If I go into that desktop again, I'm on my iPad here, and I would need, oh God, now I need a keyboard or whatever. You'll see that basically I've got that. Oh, here's the keyboard up the top there. So I could go enter, and then go hello as well, ... And then you'll see that I've got the session running there. I can add more sessions. I can control how the mouse works. And then when I'm finished, again, I can drop out of that session. And if I then, for example, decided to drop back to my desktop, you would see that updated thing that I've just done. So again, that's the concept there, but rather than, I'm happy to show you, but just save me going in. So the answer is yes, you're going to be able to access your virtual or your cloud PC from any location where you have internet connectivity. So through a browser, through an iPhone, through an iPad, or whatever. Now, the benefits of that are going to be, for example, is A, if you can't get a PC, B, if your device breaks, let's say you have an emergency, or you just want to make some updates, or you want to move a third-party line of business application into the cloud as well, rather than having any servers on-prem because you're cancelling your lease and cutting it back. It allows you to move effectively all of this infrastructure for you directly into the cloud. So it's going to give you that flexibility, and like I said, it's a fixed cost per month. So
the thing that I see as some real value when I think about the users that, like in user scenario, I suppose, Rob, you know, what kind of user scenario you're thinking, like frontline and people out that are working on railways, for example, and they don't have a PC out there, for example, or maybe even a laptop that could get damaged. They need their iPad and it's got to be heavy duty, and so they can still access technically a desktop when they're sort of out there.
Well, here's the real winner here. Think education.
Yep.
Think the fact that schools can provide cheap and cheerful, you know, cut down machines which are just effectively a screen, but at the back end, the students can still access the most powerful capability to access any application, but they're doing so through their device. Another really good example is take a look at a company that does architects, their CAD/CAM. One of their limitations was we've got big files on-prem, we can't synchronize to the cloud, we haven't got enough bandwidth to be syncing terabytes of data every night. The architects themselves need very powerful workstations to do engineering drawings, But the solution here is if I move the big data and I move the powerful workstations all into the data into the cloud, then they get the same experience because they've got the big files in the cloud and the big workstations in the cloud, but they get the flexibility to work from everywhere. They get the flexibility to size those machines as they need them. So if they need less power, they can downsize them and only pay for exactly what they need. If someone leaves or they add staff, they can add that capability quickly and easily. So again, one of the limitations of on-prem environments and infrastructure is that once you buy it, you've got to live with it. You can't take it back in a couple of months. You know what, meh, don't really need this, or I'd like a bit more of this or a bit less of this. In this case, having it as a virtual machine or a virtual PC is going to give you that flexibility. So the idea here is this is going full circle in a nutshell. The good old days when computers started out, they were just dumb terminals with a mainframe at the back end. We're effectively getting to this same sort of environment where your device will simply be a terminal for screen I/O, mouse interactions, and keyboard, and all the real processing will be done in the cloud by infrastructure that is managed and maintained by Microsoft.
Yeah, no, I agree. So then one of the questions was that kind of customized organizational desktop where it, has a very specific background and, a SOE. Is that all, available as well?
So the idea is again, this is largely, again, policy. So if you have a look at, the desktops, so let me pull up the desktop again. So I'm on my normal PC, I'll click on the app and we should, when it logs in, hopefully, see the fact that it has been the update. So you'll notice that when this machine, I've got to double click it. Maybe when this machine comes in, you will see that it already has a custom background. So all of that stuff is generally managed by policy. So if you have your policy set up for your environment, typically using Intune or what they call Endpoint Manager now, that will flow to your cloud PC like your desktop. There is no difference. Again, the cloud PC is just effectively a PC for all intensive purposes. And if we come in here, once it logs into it, you'll see you get that wallpaper experience. You would have your image up there if that was configured. And then when we come in, you'll notice that I get my version of Office. So I like dark theme. So here's the text that was added by the iPad. And if I minimize it, here's my customized background, my customized wallpaper, which again is coming through policy because this virtual PC is the same as a desktop PC. It consumes those policies irrespective of where it actually lives.
So we've got a question: is GPO support, okay, high-end CAD type cards coming for Win365 Business and Enterprise?
So let me talk about
that's going a little more technical. I gather we've got some technical on the call rather than
at the end of the day. The only reason you use GPUs is to do cryptocurrency mining. But as with all things Microsoft, there are two versions. There is a Windows 365 for Business, which I've just shown you. Okay, so that is, simplified.
That's under 300, isn't it? That's the under 300, and then there's over
Correct. 300. So that's less than 300 users typically. And then there is Windows 365 Enterprise. Okay, and the idea with the Enterprise is, again, it is more complex in its setup and management, but it is far more flexible. So let me just show you a quick slide here of the side-to-side comparison. Where's the show my slides? Show my slide here. Okay, so this is the feature set at a high level of the difference between Windows 365 Business and Enterprise. So you'll see Business gives you, it doesn't need a domain server. It does all the stuff in the cloud, but if you want to do custom updates, so for example, you want to do updates, your Windows updates on your own schedule, you can't do that with the Business version. You would need the Enterprise version. If you wanted to have custom images, so if you wanted to have your own unique version of Windows 10 at a certain level with certain applications in there that the company uses, again, you would need to look at Windows 365 Enterprise. So think of the business version as something that anybody can sign up to, add to their environment, and they're off to the races like I showed you. The enterprise side is something your IT department would set up, manage, and maintain, but effectively from a user's point of view, it would give you roughly the same sort of experience. So the other thing that I'll show you, I think we're getting probably close to time, is a rough idea here of the pricing. So let me just change where are those slides? Now, keep in mind that the prices listed here are US dollars, so you would need to adjust for South Pacific pesos. But if you go to the Windows 365 page, so windows365.com, you will find it will give you the capability to look at the pricing in Australian dollars. Now, what you need to remember about these prices, firstly, like I said, is they're a flat rate per month. So no matter how long my virtual machine is on for, it's only going to cost me a maximum of this amount. Whereas in Azure, with consumption base, you pay for every second and how much CPU you use and how much disk space you use and so on. This is a flat rate per month. And you can, like I said, change, upgrade, and make a resize of this at any point and then pay that difference going forward. So I think the way that I see it moving forward is that with component shortages and with people working remotely who want to start in, say, a new business, so the current situation is now called the Great Resignation, which means everybody's resigning and changing roles, and they are expecting a new PC or to get a new PC as part of that role. Well, you'll probably end up, or a better option is probably to look at getting a virtual PC the company buys for you and you just access remotely, which means the company can secure it, lock it down, apply policy, and then you just see the screen I/O and you've got your own machine.
Yeah, look, that's something that I know that I love. I'm being often training and change where I'm having to go inside and I need to use technically an organization's sort of business environment. And they have to ship a laptop to me for maybe even only just a couple of weeks. It would certainly eliminate some of that. What would you, in the flip of that, I'm thinking from the user and the risk and can they be doing something like saving it from their Windows environment, Windows 365 down to their personal iPads and stuff like that?
Well, the idea is, again, it's all driven by policy. If you want to allow that, you can certainly do that. But remember, the idea to think about this is in the context or in the environment of Microsoft 365. So in Microsoft 365, we have our email server and our emails. But now we also have the ability to have a device, a PC in the cloud, which we can secure, which we can manage, which we can maintain with policies. Now, with Microsoft 365, you can determine whether users can bring their data from OneDrive, Exchange, SharePoint down to their local environment if you wish. So the answer is yes, and it depends on the policy that the company wishes to enforce. But generally what you're going to find, I think, is most companies will simply enforce the fact that you log into a cloud PC, you work on a cloud PC, your data lives in the cloud, and it doesn't move anywhere else. So I think that's going to be the de facto norm, but could you allow local access? Absolutely.
Yeah, because I suppose I think of scenarios, and for those that are on the call, scenarios like they've got their iPhone or their iPad and they're out there and they're having to take photos of, for architects, for example, taking photos out in the community of which they might be taking it with their iPad, but then need to transfer it to kind of the desktop.
Sure, but remember that transfer generally goes straight to the cloud. It doesn't go to their desktop.
Yeah. So they're the sorts of things that I kind of think of. What is the good scenarios to be able to help a user understand the journey to Microsoft 365? Because we have to kind of put it in context of how exciting is this and what's the benefit?
Well, I think at the end of the day, what it does is it means now that if you look at the progression, the story has been, as I tried to highlight, is we've moved more and more of the IT into the cloud. We've moved the management and responsibility of that also into vendors like Microsoft. So Microsoft is worrying about, are the network cables in? Are the servers turned on? Do we have electricity? And that's freeing up resources to now look at the higher scale of things like Power Automate, Power Apps, integrations with databases. So the idea is my analogy is always think of this like a utility. Nobody has generally their own generator to do electricity. We rely on the supplier to do that. They spread the costs amongst many organizations to keep that down. So the idea is it's becoming a utility more and more so. This is becoming the infrastructure side, the PCs, the device, the stuff you can touch is largely moving into data centers to be managed by businesses and provided to you on a per monthly cost. And that's a good thing because it allows you then to focus on what you need to do, and it provides a consistent environment in which you can work. So effectively, that's the benefit. It's the benefit of a utility.
So another question that's popped up then. Would you say you'd need to do Microsoft 365 as the flip, I suppose, subscription to make sure you got Intune and that whole multi-factor authentication, everything to be able to work if you wanted to bring your own devices and stuff like that? Because we're seeing so much of that in terms of the end user where they're, bringing in their own phones and iPads, and it's not necessarily provided by an organization. Are these the things in terms of that we need to be helping?
At the end of the day, you want as much security as makes sense for your organization, and that's increasing every day. That security is largely provided by policy, and that the way to push down policy to multiple devices is using Intune endpoint management. But you don't necessarily have to have it, but it makes life so much easier. And if you think back a step to when we were on-prem, in the on-prem world, we were using something called group policy to effectively manage the configuration of every machine in our local area network. Intune is just the cloud version of that. So yes, effectively all organizations sort of do. You don't absolutely need it, but it makes life a hell of a lot easier.
The reason I'm asking that for you guys is to have a think about if you're thinking about a change and adoption program, what are the steps that would probably need to go into play before this actually hits your end user? You might have to do, for example, an MFA rollout and advise why you're doing the security to get ready for this or to get ready for that. Or, what does it mean to get you to that point? So you'll have some steps on the journey along the way that you'll have to have in play potentially. So it's kind of just why I'm bringing it up. It's the, what's the thought before before you hit it, there's going to be probably a bigger journey than a lot of people are thinking of.
Well, I think part of this, just again, think of it like this, right? When we started off with IT, we all basically went to the office and used a computer that was supplied by the organization. Typically today, most people have one or more PCs in their home, as well as potentially at the office, plus they have devices. So again, just think of this as the next evolution of devices, one that is not tied to actually physically having to be there. It allows you to access it on any place you have the internet, a screen, and a keyboard to get your job done.
I'm conscious of time. Does anyone want to ask any questions? Throw your hand up if you would like to come off mute. I'm more than happy to, have you come off mute so that you can have a chat or ask questions. I do know that there is one there going, will that be available in IUR for Silver Gold Partner? I'm not sure what that is. I don't live in that space.
That's internal use rights. So if you're a Microsoft partner, you get a certain level of capability. So there is basically no commitment from Microsoft as yet. This is a very, very new product. And again, the general response from Microsoft is most partners do not use the full breadth of what their IUR capabilities that have been given by Microsoft are. So at this stage, there is no news. I see that unlikely unless you have high-end competencies or you decide to specialize in this. So the answer would be no for the time being, but that may change down the track. But just to give you an idea is when this launched on the 2nd of August, they launched a 60-day trial that you could sign up with, and that was going to give you 60 days worth of using Windows. They closed that down within 8 hours due to the popularity and the demand. They simply didn't have enough machines to do trials and production. So again, this is a huge over-demand, oversubscribed service, so it would seem unlikely for the time being the partners will get, a freebie via their IUR.
Any questions, anyone? I haven't seen any hands go up. We've got no, none coming through. Oh, look, I'll keep an eye out on the chat. Thank you for that, Robert. That really simplified things, I know, to try and help me get my head around it. I was sort of watching it through the Microsoft, Inspire conference and trying to get my head around it and going, I'm not sure I quite understand. I understand it's the cloud, but it was a little hard for me and from my perspective. So I really appreciate you trying to sort of break that down, and I understand it now. I think I've got my head around it. So thank you.
No problems.
Okay, right. I just finalise now. Here we go. Bring it back up on the screen and throw myself to the side there for you. It's just okay. So I'll keep an eye out on the questions in case there's anything. So thanks for that. As per usual, at the very end, I have lots of resources and links that I'll always keep trying to drop in to the back end here for you. As something new comes up, I put another link in to be able to help out. Where do you find a lot of this latest information? So these are sort of where I go, as well as in your message center. There are lots of other really great user groups. I also recommend, and I haven't put it up here, the Microsoft Reactor. If you go to YouTube, the Microsoft Reactor have lots of fabulous sessions that they've got going on, and they're interviewing us MVPs and lots out there. I've got productivity sessions on there as well to be able to help and support you. What I'm going to start doing for you is at the end of this presentation, I'm going to put some of the links in for you. I've kind of thought, I think if that might help. So it'll be things like we did, Microsoft Lists and Viva, and I thought I might drop in some of those links to be able to help and support you if you think that would be of value. What's next? We always generally have on the first Tuesday of the month, so we'll be back around on the 5th of October to be able to talk. I haven't got the speaker lined up, and unfortunately, sorry, last month got cancelled. It was a bit of crazy times with everyone going back into isolation, and lots was actually happening. So I kind of gave everyone a little bit of break. But we've done a bit of a catch up. If there are any thoughts, questions, don't forget it's recorded. So the link that you've actually been given there, it will just automatically update with the latest link and the details and information for you. I've also put the link to the PDF in the conversation chat along the way if you want to actually download that particular report. Otherwise it'll be online, and hopefully you've enjoyed it. I'm always happy to have any feedback. Please feel free to flow through. You can always email me, kirsty@onpointsolutions.com.au. I will always punch it out on LinkedIn and Twitter. Feel free to connect with me on either at any point. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much, Robert, for helping out, and for everyone that came in. I do appreciate, and I so look forward to seeing you all face to face, hopefully in the new year. Have a fabulous week, and we'll catch up again soon.
Thank you, Kirsty.
You're very welcome. Nice to hear.
Thanks, Kirsty. Cheers.
Yes.
Hi. We haven't had many video on. It's sometimes hard to talk to a black screen.